Sabrina 90s comic issue 3. We started with Cleopatra complaining because Sabrina got Mark in love with her, and Cleo says that he's always had a weakness for peasants. Sabrina uses her magic to telekinetically bring the magic book back to her, and says that she's gonna lock it up. That'd be smart of her. It'd be the smartest of all if she had got the book back from her or warped it to her bedroom as soon as she saw her. Sabrina does all of what Cleopatra did. Oh, right. Cleopatra reminds us of the Diabolos Ex Machina that Sabrina can't return into the past unless she wants to go back. I forgot about it because it was so illogical. How would she ever change her mind then? She's stubborn. This is the 21st century and she's a woman. She'd never want to go back. She hates the sandstorms. I wish it was explained in the comic that the Witches' Council made this rule to be compassionate to people from ancient times, who naturally don't want to go back to their awful past. And that they didn't actually care about preserving Earth history the way it is for the sake of it, when they could be considerate enough to let ancient people rescue themselves, like their time refugees. If people are able to summon historical figures just fine when it breaks a code against altering history, then the council can't really care about preserving mortal history. Cleopatra decides to get a soda with Harvey, who still likes her with a spell off him because he doesn't know any better. I guess everyone's had their memories wiped. Sabrina thinks that this means she's gotta keep getting Cleo jealous. She tells Mark, whose name is misspelled somehow, that she's got a crane in her neck. On instinct, on the first glance, I thought she was about to point and use magic just to get spotted by a mortal and decide to pretend she was holding her neck in pain instead, because of the word magic in her thought bubble. Why did the word magic exist in that? That's not how the phrase goes. She convinces Mark to massage her neck. Cleo asks for one from Harvey, and then Sabrina uses her magic to make him do a painful job. Sabrina just smiles at this. Well, I can imagine one of the Sonic characters would cringe at it. I wish the text box told me how much time has passed instead of just saying soon. That's just lazy. Sabrina asks why Cleo isn't jealous of her and Mark, but she clearly is. That's why she got mad. I guess she means not jealous enough. Mark explains that Cleopatra's only true love is herself. Is this an accurate portrayal of her personality, or just being mean? I mean, if she only got to the position she had been because of her personality, and therefore, wouldn't that mean her charisma in real life? She doesn't seem to have any charisma in this comic. Mark explains that her title and place in history is what she's all about. So Sabrina teleports him with her to the school library to take a look at the history books. All of a sudden, entire books about Cleopatra start fading away. I think I remember that Cleopatra wasn't even a native of Egypt. Hasn't she already achieved enough by this point that those books shouldn't be disappearing? This is dumb. She was a woman who managed to become Queen of Egypt despite being foreign to it, wasn't she? Maybe I wouldn't be unsure of the details if the comic hadn't skipped over telling Sabrina about her life. She could have at least summarized it. She said she was only able to read hieroglyphics, as if she is native to Egypt in Sabrina's world. Sabrina says that these paintings of Cleopatra in the encyclopedia are also fading out. So Sabrina decides to show Cleopatra that her history won't exist if she doesn't go back home. Never mind everything she's done as the queen before she was sent to the future. Come on, this is ridiculous. I'm pretty sure that Cleopatra would have been summoned from the latest point in time that she was relevant, because she was summoned for a history lecture after Sabrina read a history book about her. So she would have summoned Cleopatra with her most recent achievements, her most recently read about achievements in mind, so that she could tell her about them. So this shouldn't be happening. It would be a more natural resolution if they went with the idea that Cleopatra simply really started missing ancient Egypt and started finding out about problems unique to the 21st century. Wouldn't curiosity lead her to research how Egypt is now and she'd want to go back home? I can understand some passages in a history book disappearing, but not entire books. Somehow Cleopatra comes to the insane conclusion that her existence will be wiped out. It's not like she's gotten rid of her parents. Also, what is that old man doing here? He's got a long white beard and everything. He looks a little old to be the school librarian. She then screams at seeing a picture of someone named Hortense replacing her as the Queen of the Nile. Why would anyone replace her as Queen of the Nile instead of an actual member of the Egyptian royalty becoming the male pharaoh. Was Hortense Egyptian royalty? This story doesn't tell me. Wasn't she lucky she could even get into her position, and only got it because she kept manipulating the right men? There wouldn't be a new queen that would make history just as much for the same reason. It'd just be a new pharaoh. Cleopatra says that Hortense is our biggest rival in Egypt, and it takes a while longer than I wanted for her to decide to go back. Sabrina says that they have to be careful not to change history, so both Cleopatra and Mark must go. Why is Mark misspelled again? I know Mark was spelled the normal way in ancient times. Mark, meanwhile, has taken off in a car with a woman who somehow doesn't get confused and immediately stops the car after he shows her they doesn't know what a car is called. How would he ever want to go back? Again, Cleo says that maybe she should follow him. You think? So Sabrina says she'll hail a cab. I mean, if they warp him to her, then the woman in the car would have seen that, and the car would have crashed. Cleo asks why they can't just fly on a broom, thankfully with the two of them whispering in the cab. Never mind, Sabrina stops whispering when she says that a witch and her flying through town on a broom wouldn't look so good. Suddenly now she's worried about people discovering her magic. Cleo tells the driver to speed it up. I hope he got a good tip. Too bad there's no indication he was ever paid. They go to the malt shop. Mark says that he likes it here because they have dancing and girls with sports cars. I have a hard time believing that ancient Egypt didn't have dancing. I guess he's saying this because he's surprised that people in the future still have dancing? Mark gets dragged by her and somehow gets out of her grip and says he's tired of her calling all the shots. So he decides to stay. He wants to get a sports car and go out with a different girl every night. He says this right in front of that girl, who's somehow not looking directly at him and doesn't even react. She sure is polite. I guess she wants a different guy every night. He says he wants to buy lots of cool clothes and be on Baywatch. How does he expect to get a job with no proper education or experience or resume? He should know he won't be able to buy anything unless he begs on the street. Maybe it was easier to get a job back in the olden days. I mean, does he even know resumes exist? Then we see a brief side story page. Sabrina says that she'd like to buy a ticket to tomorrow night's concert, which is totally not for the Smashing Pumpkins. She's told that it just sold out. Amy then brags to her that she got the last seat, as she just so happens to be right here, and it just so happens to be her, of all people. Sabrina says that she'll just go home and listen to them, and we cut to her teleporting the band to her house and brainwashing them into happily playing music for her, even though they're wondering how they got here. Logically, you'd think Sabrina would immediately hate being so up close to the speaker when the guitar plays. I guess it did, and the story didn't show us her using a spell to get rid of that problem. Anyways, Cleopatra tries to order a sundae that's double with extra fudge. With what money? Where is she getting any money? It'd be fine if we were shown Sabrina giving her money. I can't help but sympathize with her and Mark wanting to enjoy themselves in the 20th century for all it's worth. I kept saying 21st century earlier because I'm so used to that. Seeing Mark be a Casanova with so many different girls isn't as interesting as it was with Scourge because he was with girls we actually knew. And it was a surprising twist because we'd expect an evil twin of Sonic to do something a lot worse. Oh, that's convenient. The woman tells him out of nowhere that she's a producer of a game show and happens to be doing the show here in town this week. And she decides to make him a mystery guest on a whim. So she tells him that she'll get him on today because it's almost airtime. This was such a surprise that I completely forgot about it and rediscovered it when I was recording the script. But it has been months since I've read this comic, so I might be surprised by a lot of things. If the game show's about trivia, wouldn't he horribly lose? Unless it was on ancient Egypt exclusively, and even then, only about his time period. Well, I'm glad we're going to get to see Mark try to get on TV because he wanted to get on TV. It's more interesting than just leaving it to a one-time joke. Sabrina's aunts then teleport into the malt shop to talk to Sabrina. I guess whatever footage caught them on camera ended up being wiped by a spy witch. If I don't mention this, I won't be fully talking about the logic of the stories, and then I won't be as motivated to analyze it as well as I can. But this has gotten repetitive even for me. I guess Sabrina's aunts stared into a crystal ball so that they could find out where exactly Sabrina is. Sabrina says that Cleo discovered ice cream when she clearly did earlier in the comic. Unless Sabrina's being really exact and pedantic and doesn't count frozen yogurt as any kind of ice cream. I figured the whole problem Cleo had with the frozen yogurt was that it gave her an ice cream headache. Cleo asked Salem to sit with her and let her tell him about her troubles with men. He thinks she's crazy, and Cleo asks for another sundae for herself and a bowl of milk for her friend Salem. It's always sweet how nice she is to cats. By the way, cats are lactose intolerant. Cartoons need to stop portraying them as drinking milk, especially exclusively instead of just a brief snack. Salem thinks amusingly because of all the sundaes, if she keeps this up, she's gonna be as white as the Nile. Not if she has a good metabolism. She doesn't get to eat sundaes much, let her have fun. Sabrina's asked what the game show for Mark is all about, and she explains that a single guy or girl asks questions to 3 members of the opposite gender without seeing them, and then the contestant picks one of the 3 for a date. Huh? What kind of game show is that? Where's the trivia? I don't watch game shows though, I barely hear about any. I know about Jeopardy and The Price is Right. Cleopatra says amusingly, Mark Antony on a date with someone else? Hit me with another sundae. And Sabrina doesn't complain about her wallet. Also, I've always been annoyed that everyone insists on referring to Mark by his full name, every single time. No one would do that. Hilda has an idea, saying that they should change out a couple of the panelists. Panel just makes me think of comic book panels. It's weird to call them panelists. She says that she'll put Cleopatra as one of the panelists under Sabrina's supervision. And Cleo agrees for her own sake. Out of nowhere, it turns out Amy's here, and she asks Sabrina and Cleo what they're doing here and where are the other girls. Of all the places in the city where Amy could have been, Sabrina says, would you believe Antarctica? They would freeze to death. Maybe Sabrina teleported them to a warm place in Antarctica, like a warm building she magically summoned. Because she's not a monster, and isn't upset about this. Otherwise, she would inevitably teleport the girls back here and feel horrible. So Mark asks the ladies what they like to do most on a rainy day. Amy says go shopping with her dad's credit cards, and Sabrina says study. Cleopatra says that she wants to curl up on a comfortable throne with a good papyrus scroll. She'd certainly be memorable to the audience. Mark says that sounds nice, and then asks what kind of vehicle the girls all think that he drives. I wish I wasn't so bored and impatient with this. She answers correctly, and he's amazed at the voice behind the curtain being right. He should know immediately that it's Cleopatra after that. I guess he does, because that makes sense. He asks the ladies what the perfect date is. Amy says that she'd want him to bring her some flowers, and then they go out for an expensive dinner and see a foreign film. Yeah, have fun seeing a movie where you just read the subtitles. I'm sure your boyfriend would love that. Sabrina bores her by saying that she'd want to rent a video and make popcorn, but she's the smartest one there. That's the cheapest option, and she's really easy to make happy. That's the best girlfriend ever. Not to mention it'd be the most likely to make the boyfriend happy. Cleo says that her perfect date would be a stroll through the Valley of Kings to the banks of the Nile, where she'll feed him grapes by the moonlight. Mark's asked to choose a girl, and he says that Sabrina has all the charm of a gladiator, and Cleo had the best answers. But it was immediately given away that he wasn't going to pick her because he mentioned her second. I like that she held Sabrina's hands being excited. Instead, Mark says that he wants to pick Amy because she has the sexiest voice. This is in character for him actually, because he wanted every girl but Cleopatra, who he was bored by. And he was sick of her bossing him around. I wonder how historically accurate his portrayal is. I was confused at how the story was trying to go for the sappy romantic ending where Mark was happy to pick Cleo because of her answers when he wanted everyone but her. But then the story had smarter writing than that. Cleo says that when Mark sees Amy, he'll forget all about Cleopatra. Then Sabrina zaps Amy, saying that she wouldn't count on that, making her have a huge nose. And somehow, Amy isn't aware of this immediately, when you can see her own nose. She'd be freaking out. At least it's a funny image that she looks like this and is still asking, "What's the matter? Why are you looking at me that way?" So he panics and changes his answer to Cleopatra, instead of immediately accusing Sabrina of making her nose look weird. I mean, he knows she's a witch. So he changes his answer, and that's accepted right away, and Amy is dragged away. And somehow nobody is questioning the fact that she got a huge nose all of a sudden. Maybe that was part of Sabrina's spell. Cleo and Mark hold each other, and Cleo says that the reason he picked the other girl was that he's shallow. And somehow she loves him for it, even though it means he has no loyalty to her. You'd think a queen would be smarter than that. He kisses her and says some sappy, cliche stuff that I know is garbage because he wanted to date everyone but her. But he didn't actually want to stay with any of the other girls. So Sabrina sends Mark and Cleo back in time with their memories of the future wiped. Then her spellcasters say that their love has to blossom in every way from now on. For all she knows, that might change the future. Zelda then brings down the mood without needing to, which is fortunately lampshaded. She says that eventually he ends up dying in a sea battle, and she'll get killed by a snake. There's more to that story than that. She actually killed herself, like with that snake, on purpose. So no wonder they didn't mention that in a kid's comic. At least her knowing these Sabrina Earth facts by heart finally shows a separate personality for her from Hilda. She's the smart one and the downer, like in the show. And she's less short-tempered than Hilda, who said that she might kick the door down. Salem says that they've forgotten one thing, that they're all still on national TV. So Archie saw the whole thing. It's kind of funny that Archie keeps making cameos in Sabrina's comic for no reason. It's arrogant of Archie the company, but I can't help but be happy about it because I used to read Archie. Before I got bored of the inevitable arc fatigue of whether he'd choose Betty or Veronica. That right there is a case where shipping ruins a series because there were plots outside of that, but I don't remember them at all. Anyways, of course Sabrina uses her magic to send memory racing waves out of the TV so that everyone will forget this entire episode. It sure is a good thing for her that either nobody taped this episode, no one will ever be able to see this episode again in reruns or piracy, or a spy witch will pick up the slack and solve all of these inevitable problems behind the scenes. Or maybe every time someone watches the whole episode, they get affected by Sabrina's memory racing magic. Sabrina then leaves to study because she just remembered she has a physics test tomorrow on Einstein's theories. Right after that, she's then enough of a ditz to even consider zapping Einstein up, being prepared to not learn from her mistake and do it all over again. But I'm sure she won't repeat the same plot with him, because that'd be bad writing after an entire arc of this that logically wouldn't have been an arc at all. Hilda tells Sabrina not to think about it, and Zelda says that she's just saying that because she knows those brainy types always go for her. Why is she expecting that this time when she has short hair, not to mention green hair, which everyone is somehow too polite to make fun of? You'd think it'd be Zelda the smart one who'd be saying what Hilda is. I wish it was explained that the reason Sabrina's okay with her still having green hair, when the whole point of her having a makeover was so that she'd blend in and look nice, was that she was still attached to how Zelda normally looked in some sense. This story was by Dan Parent and Bill Gallagher, and was about Cleopatra's mind being changed about staying in the present because somehow history books about her are disappearing, when she must have been zapped up from a point in time after she achieved what the books had on her. That doesn't make any sense. They seem to have written themselves into a corner, having her only be able to be sent home because she wants to be, and still wanting to stay here despite being used to her home. It should be explained that Hortense erased the historical records of her, and that's why this is happening. But you'd have to be really, really good at it, because haven't people tried to do that, and archaeologists still found out about them? So after this is resolved lazily, Mark wants to stay in the future, so we get to see his character fleshed out a bit more. And he enters a game show where he asks women questions and gets to pick which one he wants to date. He ends up picking Amy in a twist that takes advantage of him being shallow. But Sabrina makes her look ugly so that he'll change his answer to Cleopatra instead and agree to be warped home, instead of instantly knowing that Sabrina did this to her and asking her to change her back. Really? The Mark part of the story was the least contrived, even if you got very lucky here, but I couldn't help but find it boringly mundane and tedious. But there were some good things about the story, like the part where Cleo kept wanting some sundaes, and the constant use of magic kept it from being too boring.